I'm honored to have my guests today with me. Dimitar, Zdravko, and Nicolae. It's so important in this moment of crisis in our region, where the war of Ukraine has taken over so much of everybody's attention, and the security of the region is under threat, that we come together and we coordinate in addition to on a NATO level, in addition on EU and future EU member states level, really on the Balkan level as well. My dream is to have a very coordinated Balkans for all topics. We've discussed that if this coordination continues as we have started, when the cross-border cooperation really is activated, when our defense strategies are common, when the economic competitiveness is joint, this could become one of the fastest growing regions of Europe, and sharing joint security and the collaboration can bring our citizens much better welfare and standard of living. We discussed important topics today that the war has made them even more urgent. The first one is on energy coordination. As we know, our region is dependent on Russian energy, and we've discussed how we can reverse some of the existing pipelines to start working in the opposite direction, to take LNG from Greece and Turkey and bring it up into the Balkans through the existing pipelines. We've also discussed connectivity. We've discussed corridor number 8, that it has to be put on the map strongly. But not only the existing corridor number 8, but starting from Podgorica, going to Duras, Skopje, Sofia, Dimitrovgrad, Burgas, Varna, and at the same time, south-north corridor going from Alexandroupolis to Burgas, Varna, and Constanța. These connections are not only important for the economies of our countries, they are important for military mobility as well. All NATO countries are talking about planes, investment in equipment, but these equipment, unless they're jointly working with strategy that's correspondent, the effectiveness of the overall strategy would not be as strong. We've also discussed that when we have expensive military systems, it's much better to coordinate on a local, regional level so that our investments are working jointly, and this coordination can create an overall synergy in our defense capabilities. We've also discussed the topic of migrants. As we know, Romania is right now the hardest hit, with the highest number of refugees coming in. They've done a great job accepting those people and making them feel at home. We've discussed that as this conflict continues, we have to have a common strategy on that. Of course, we should talk about our EU partners and allies about a solidarity mechanism for some of those EU migrants, but also distribution within the region so that we can face this migrant wave. Food security is becoming a major topic as well. Food security in terms of availability of wheat, availability of oil. These are important topics, and we'll put our agricultural ministers to talk to each other to make sure that the food security of the region is protected. We also discussed the rebuilding of Ukraine. We hope that this next phase we'll see sooner than later, and together we can coordinate in this strategy and see how jointly we can help the rebuilding of Ukraine in the most productive and the most logical way. And the final point that it was mentioned is our joint topic of eradicating money laundering and helping each other against the fight of corruption. As we know, cross-border money laundering is a vital topic to be coordinated upon in order to be able to stop it. No country alone can do it. Especially in our region, this is of significant importance. And this is also connected with a topic that we've discussed during the EU summit and the NATO summit, even with our allies such as the US, that local corruption, in many cases, is the instrument that the Russian Federation has used to influence in the region. The same people that are locally corrupt are also, in many cases, the agents of foreign interests that we should all address. So, in this morning meeting, we outlined all these topics, and these are not just discussion points. These will be tasks that we all have to continue working on. We'll put our ministers together, and the Balkans should become a symbol of a coordinated region and really change what has happened in the past to be something very different, because together, when we speak in one voice, this region can really grow. Thank you. I'll give now the word to my colleague from Montenegro.
Dear Prime Ministers, I would like at the outset to particularly express my gratitude for the Prime Minister of Bulgaria's invitation, for the invitation of Mr. Kirill Petkov, who managed to get us all together here in Sofia. That is a new beginning for us, which will enable that finally we get down to working on what is most important, that we speak less, work more, that we make some joint arrangements. I would like to express my admiration to the Romanian and Bulgarian people and everybody else who received this large number of migrants. And I can tell this because Montenegro, also during the Yugoslav crisis, for a period of time received around 200,000 refugees, and that was not simple at all, and this is not simple at all, and we should enable to all the refugees to have access to everything that your citizens have access to, and you're doing that in particular, and that is why my admiration is such. It seems like, the number of the refugees that Romania has received from Ukraine corresponds to the size of the entire population of Montenegro. All these topics that we spoke about are the topics which will guide us towards inclusive and smart action. I would particularly like to emphasize the word smart, because even though the Western Balkans is being perceived as in a completely different context, I believe that the Western Balkans is an area where the wisdom and smartness dominate. Unfortunately, this wisdom seems to be migrating elsewhere and taking root elsewhere. But now the time has come for us to join forces and to act on all grounds together in order to provide for a better future and better quality of life for all of our citizens. And precisely, all of those who have gone elsewhere should be returning to our countries, contributing to development of this area. We were caught surprised, and we seem to be stuck in the past and always dealing with history. I think we should leave the past behind, and politicians should be dealing solely by projecting our futures with public policies which would be geared towards having a better life, better standard of life. And I will just touch upon three important elements. The first one is connectivity. Montenegro was somehow left behind in this connectivity, and when we spoke about Adriatic Ionian Highway, Everybody was wondering how come that we are talking about that, but that's the only way in this 21st century to provide for several alternatives for the supply chains, regardless of what these supply chains are related to the area, to which area they are related to. Montenegro might be the only country, perhaps, in Europe which is not using gas. Our country has the potential, and now we are examining certain reservoirs of gas and oil, and I'm hopeful that this Greek-Romanian consortium will contribute to helping us start tapping into our gas and oil resources. Also, we have the port of Bar, which has major potential for the LNG, but if we do not get together, if we don't link or get more automated, the area that we inhabit will look like being different from the rest of Europe. We are not different. We want to be the same, and in order to be the same, we have to have better understanding, to have more confidence in each other, and to build bridges of cooperation. And of course, the third element, which seems to be most important, whether we are talking about military industry or other industries, we have to find some sort of modular approach in order to prove in practice that connectivity will result in economic benefits. And this certainly is a solid ground for all of us for the future meetings. And I'm hopeful that these meetings will be taking place even more frequently. This should allow us to make this being the best region in the world, not only in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirill, first of all, for organizing this important meeting, which comes only a few days after the extraordinary meeting of NATO in Brussels. And today, as allies, we have sent another strong message of support and solidarity with Ukraine, but also for future coordination and increased communication between these four countries within the region. The meetings of the heads of governments of NATO countries in Southeast Europe is our regional contribution to better resilience and coordination in relation to the potential risks and threats of the consequences of the war and security and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. This war in Ukraine has created a new reality in all ways of our living, and especially in terms of coordinating all the efforts in food production and supply chains stabilization, energy delivery and energy production, and also in the field of defense and military coordination. We have once again condemned Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, and we also, myself as a Prime Minister of North Macedonia, we support the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country of Ukraine. The responsibility now is to face the new strategic reality in Europe and in European and the transatlantic security. The allies decisively reacted in this war conflict, and also all the countries have given their support not only to the Ukrainian people which are in Ukraine, but also for the Ukrainian people which fled their country and became refugees. North Macedonia had appropriately aligned its foreign policy with the European Union, as we share the same values with the European Union and with the NATO countries. I stressed that the EU enlargement is essentially becoming also a security policy, and that the stalemate in the process creates additional instability for the region, as has multiple negative tendencies and creates room for malicious influences by third countries. The delay in the EU accession process of the countries in the region creates dilemmas that could result in a decrease in citizens' trust in the European Union. However, in these challenging times, the Republic of North Macedonia remains strongly committed to maintaining good neighbourly relations and promoting cooperation between the countries in our region. Our commitment is to remain focused on promoting those values and principles during our forthcoming OSCE chairmanship in 2023, as well as to use the potential of other regional initiatives to better connect, understand, and to coordinate between each other. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased to meet my colleagues Zdravko, Kirill, and Dimitar. And I would like also to thank to my friend Kirill for convening this meeting and for his hospitality. Today's meeting provided a timely opportunity to deepen consultations on the consequences of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on the security of southeastern Europe. These discussions are timely follow-up to the NATO summit in Brussels last week. Russia's war of choice against Ukraine gravely affects the security climate in the Black Sea and Southeast Europe regions. Coordination in the southeastern part is a must, and today we did just that. Togetherness is the key in any conflict management. That is why, together with my colleagues, we have decided to stand firm in our strategic orientation towards the Euro-Atlantic values. Today we discussed how to develop our cooperation as NATO allies in order to strengthen NATO's posture of deterrence and defense in the eastern flank. On the eastern flank. Our countries have already a strong expertise of regional cooperation in the field of defense that can be capitalized towards this goal. I have invited our allies to contribute to the NATO structures on our territory. We do not have any doubt that Russia is now the most serious threat for our common security. We need stronger defense for more effective deterrence, and we need more society and infrastructure resilience for better security. We acknowledge the malign Russian posture and influence in the region. We decided to face it by increasing our resilience. This includes reducing energy dependence on Russia, combating Russian fake narratives, more cyber protection, and increased trade among us. We have showed a constructive approach in assisting our like-minded partners to cope with the consequences of this unprovoked war conducted by Russia. Ukraine is in a critical situation. A special attention should go to the Republic of Moldova, which is confronted with overlapping crises. The refugees crisis has tested the resilience of state institutions and their economic hardship resulting from the war. At the same time, all the support goes out to Montenegro to up the tempo of reforms in correlation with the advanced status and roadmap towards membership. I think our meeting today in Sofia has just made all of us advance towards closer cooperation in this part of Europe, and we have all agreed to continue along this path and jointly face the threats on our common security. I would like also to mention that what has been shared with you by Kirill, by Zdravko, by Dimitar, or discussed and we will continue to discuss through our bilateral meetings today, and for sure we will do our best to find solutions to ensure our citizens that we will do our best in order to cope with all those crises and price rising of energy, gas, and of course this threat which is also considered to become the food problem. So thank you very much again, Kirill, and see you soon in Romania.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to, by the way. So now is the time for questions.
Infrastructure projects. Did you prioritize one of them? Did you set any deadlines? And question to the Prime Ministers of Bulgaria and the Republic of North Macedonia. EU enlargement is key for security. Is there any progress in the talks between Sofia and Skopje, especially in the light of the fight against hate speech? And if you allow me, just one question for Prime Minister Kirill Petkov. We called our ambassador from the Russian Federation. Did he arrive here in Sofia? Did you talk to him? We have citizens also in the Russian Federation. Did you manage to evacuate them and to bring them back to Bulgaria? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the energy project, what's interesting is we already have the Trans-Balkan pipeline. The Trans-Balkan pipeline has a significant capacity, and it used to give us gas from Romania through Bulgaria all the way to Turkey. Now it's time to reverse this. Now it's time to see how we can use gas from Turkey and from LNG from Greece to bring back this gas back into Romania, into the circle of the Bulgarian infrastructure that has already ability to deliver into the Balkans this gas. We've also spoken that this connection would go to North Macedonia as well. So what we talked about, and Nicolae said very well, the war has brought us to move very fast, and in many cases we have to turn our strategy 180 degrees. That's true for the gas direction as well. What used to flow from the north now has to flow from the south. We also spoke about our focus on renewable energy, and we shared common idea that investing in renewables together and jointly could give us the opportunity to have local capabilities in the Balkans to increase the value chain that's connected with these investments in renewable energy. So both of those projects were specifically mentioned, as we know, in Montenegro and in Romania and North Macedonia. This is a major focus. And combining our resilience and recovery plan that we have focused with 6,000 gigawatts of battery projects, putting battery capabilities in the Balkan would create not only energy security but also competitiveness. And on the final question, yes, today we are having a humanitarian flight coming from Russia, bringing 64 Bulgarians. This is the only way we could take them back due to the current restriction of flight. So I'm happy that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was able to do this in a very swift and very coordinated way. And yes, I want to confirm that our ambassador from Russia is being brought in for consultations. We expect the same thing to be done from the Russian Federation with the ambassador. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. In terms of energy, even last year, we have, as a country, we have started projects which are in the field of energy transition. So from the traditional energy sources to enter a production of renewable energy from renewable sources, and that is why numerous projects in the field of solar energy were started. One of them will very soon be in production mode, connected to the grid. Also, in terms of supply of gas, we are also a country which is dependent fully on Russian gas. And that's why North Macedonia has made a decision and already signed the first contract to enter in the project of the new LNG terminal in Greece. There is also going to be present Bulgaria and Greece, so it is a regional strategic project, and as we say now, the gas will flow from south to the north, for instance, of the current from east to the west. We also work on the interconnection of the gas pipeline from Greece to North Macedonia, which is a project practically in a final stage of its implementation. Another aspect of the energy is the connectivity, the grid. So that is why just 30 days ago we started a new 400 kilovolt connection between North Macedonia and Albania. This is not only important for the two countries, North Macedonia and Albania, but it is also important for the whole region, including Bulgaria, because now the electricity produced in Greece can go through North Macedonia, through Albania, and also through the underwater cable going to Italy and to other countries. And this is practically showing how regional cooperation and investments in big strategic energy infrastructural projects can benefit not only one country but the whole region. In terms of your question related to the open talks which we have with the government of Bulgaria, as you know, on the first day of practically in the first weeks of our mandates, we started a new dialogue which is grounded on issues which are forward-looking, and that is why we created working groups in the field of economy, infrastructure, European integration, education, culture, and they are really giving results. As you know, that already practical projects from the perspective of companies, of the institutions within the countries, and from the perspective of citizens are in place. We have improved communication between our educational institutions. We already have an operational airline between Sofia and Skopje, and our ministers are hands-on working on infrastructural projects which are connecting both countries. In terms of the political questions, the ministries of foreign affairs are working between themselves. They are on a level of exchange of ideas and documents. But there is still not a final document which has been agreed, and as soon as this will happen, then we can share it with the relevant institutions within the countries. In terms of the dialogue and in terms of the way of speaking, I believe that communication between two neighboring countries has to be grounded of values of cooperation, of European values, of mutual understanding, trust, and respect. And this is the way neighboring countries should communicate between themselves. And this is the narrative which is now dominant and which is set between the two prime ministers, between the two governments, and between the institutions. As always, there will be marginalized small groups which do not want to see this dialogue go into the right direction. But I believe that now we have a communication, and we have a media which is dominated by positive and by cooperative news between the two countries, which practically can be seen now happening. Thank you.
Diana Drašković, televizija Crne Gore.
Diana Drašković, TV Montenegro. I have a question for the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Kirill Petkov. How do you see Montenegro? You talked about the lack of food supply, major problems that the Western Balkans countries are facing. How do you see the position of Montenegro? Could you cooperate with our country? And if you can cooperate with our country, perhaps this could be a question for all the prime ministers. How do you see these food supply chains? You spoke about the lack and shortage of food. Do countries of the Western Balkans have reason to be afraid? And can we cooperate in this regard, the food supply? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Where is the worry about the food supply today? There are two elements of worry that are worrying us all. One is that Russia has stopped their exports of grains and wheat, And the second worry is that the ports on the Black Sea, the Ukrainian ports of the Black Sea, are not able to transport also their harvest. And if this conflict continues, that will be the case for harvest of 2022, and maybe potentially even further. Also, we are worried about the fertilizer shortage that also is related with ban of exports from these two countries. So in this respect, that could be a challenge for food supply in Europe as well as for the region. Thankfully, our region is blessed with the ability to grow a lot of those crops, and what we discussed with my friends on both sides is that we'll put our agricultural ministers together to make sure that the food security is dealt with not on a national level, but really on a regional level as well. And we are here to coordinate and help each other in order to make sure that no such shortages are so severe in the region. So I think that's a major continuation to our this morning's discussion, and we've agreed even with the Minister of Montenegro to very quickly speak with the ministers of the other countries to arrange for some direct solutions on this shortage issue. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Let me just tell you that every form of dependency is bad, and a scientist decided to change his secretary, even though she was brilliant after some time. At the very moment when he would feel he would be dependent on her presence, he would switch and have another secretary. So you know that in all the systems of manufacturing industry, there are at least 3 key suppliers for every project, for every product. A, supplier B, supplier C. They are all categorized according to their capabilities to provide for what is needed and to offset any disturbances on the market. Our today's meeting was also dedicated to that issue, especially when it comes to food security. I believe that we have forgotten about a very important principle that has to be fully affirmed. And this holds true for our region, at least, if nowhere else beyond our region. We have to abide by the elementary principles. We have to cut the barriers, the administrative barriers and cost barriers. This crisis has shown that solidarity has to be vital in our lives, and this solidarity is reflected in our talks about shortage of food. Perhaps some have surplus of food, some have shortage. Let us strike the right balance to the satisfaction of both sides. You know very well that what Kirill mentioned about money laundering is something where the supply chains function impeccably. So why wouldn't these supply chains function impeccably also when it comes to our cooperation, to our trade? We have all the preconditions, we have good political will, and we want to establish trust, and that's how we will solve many problems. Thank you.
I do believe it's important to mention that so far we don't face any problem regarding the food supply, and of course there are problems regarding food chain of supply because of the Russians' invasion of the Ukraine and all the other sanctions applied to Russia. And in this respect, we have to evaluate all those impacts. We were discussing how we can support each other, and one of the main aspects which has been raised is the problem of fertilizers. So that's why I think energy and gas resources are very important, because fertilizers are mostly gas, and in this respect I do really want to thank Kirill and his government for their commitment in finishing the process of the interconnector from Greece to Bulgaria, because that is going to ensure another alternative for the LNG supply, as we mentioned, from Alexandroupolis all the way through the vertical corridor to Bulgaria, Romania, and then from the other European countries. So this is all about, and this dialogue is very important because we know each other and we ask our ministers of agriculture, ministers of energy, ministers of transportation to work together and to find those specific and technical solutions to solve all these kinds of problems. Thank you very much.
Question. First, the war in Ukraine caused by Russia's attack created the biggest disbalances and problems on the markets after the Second World War. Problem number one is the deficit in gas supply and the historically lowest level of reserves in Europe, which not only increased the price of gas, but also increased the price of electricity for more than 5 times. The lack of gas also is pressuring on the production of ammonium, which is one of the key elements of production of fertilizers. And now there is a lack of fertilizers on the world market. And the one which can be found is 300 to 400% with a higher price. So this creates additional pressure on the food production. On the other side, the prices of food have risen with the highest percentage again after the Second World War, and this is because the two biggest producers of wheat, Ukraine before all and Russia, are practically in war. Some of the countries in the region have surplus of production of wheat, and others do not have the surplus, so they actually buy from the other countries. The good thing is the solidarity which is shown and the great level of responsibility by all the countries in the region. And that is why we do not have lacks of wheat at this moment and of other key food products. Here meaning before all on cooking oil and the raw cooking oil for the food industry. Not only today, we are in communication between each other all the time. So with Kirill, we had phone calls even during the weekend, and our relevant ministers are in constant communication and coordination, because we have to ensure that in this biggest crisis which Europe and the world have seen and faced after the Second World War, we will ensure food and all the necessary ingredients for our citizens, because this is our responsibility in these crisis times. Thank you.
Errol Shakiri, TV21, North Macedonia. My first question goes to Bulgarian Prime Minister, Mr. Petkov. Since the start of the Russian aggression in Ukraine, we hear loud and clear voices from Brussels and all the EU member countries that the integration of the Western Balkans should start immediately, especially for North Macedonia and Albania, which is now not just a matter of urgency, but it is also a security matter after all that happened. However, 10 days ago, Prime Minister Kovacevski, he met with Commissioner Borrell. He gave an expected diplomatic answer that for North Macedonia that we should resolve the bilateral dispute first and then start the negotiations. Now the question is, Mr. Petkov, what is the bare minimum that you are requesting from North Macedonia to do in order to leave the veto? If you cannot answer this directly, for the sake of the negotiation process, I will rephrase it. Do you think that you can lift the veto by June this year? And the second question is, in general, it's concerning the security situation in the region, and especially about Serbia and its role, considering its current relations with Russia, and also having in mind the situations in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, and Montenegro. Have you discussed about this issue? Have you discussed about the Serbian role, and could Serbia be a destabilizing factor for the Western Balkans in the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, we've discussed this topic even today. I want to say in absolutely clear message to all Bulgarian and North Macedonian and Macedonian people to say clearly that we are working with Dimitar very coordinatedly with a really focused timelines, and we have put ourselves few milestones that have to be achieved, which we've discussed in previous meetings as well. But North Macedonia belongs into the EU family as fast as possible. And our government is committed for achieving this result in a most expedient possible way. Of course, as we all know, we have few milestones that we have to clear, including protection of minority rights. We've discussed this before. We're also in very close coordination with the European partners, which in many cases will serve as a third party to this negotiation, namely that we're expecting a specific language that we're working on together to go into the negotiation framework agreement, which hopefully we should clear very soon. So I feel I have a friend on my right side here, of course on the left as well, that I think historically our relationship has improved enormously over the last 3 months, mainly because we talk so much and because we coordinate and we have this common goal. And I fully subscribe also to the fact that with the current crisis that we have with the war in Ukraine, the Western Balkans should be as stable as possible, and a big path towards this stability is the accession, the path to accession of North Macedonia and Albania. So this is clearly the case. So we're working very hard. We're having many meetings, and I'm expecting in the next few weeks this to accelerate even more. Also, I want to state is that we have some good news on some of the bilateral meetings between the different ministers. As you know, we're signing constantly additional memorandums. I'm hearing good news on the Historical Commission as well. So some of those issues that seem to be hard to overcome and now seem very realistic for the overcoming. There are a few things to be done, but I think this general answer should give you my clear intention to move as fast as possible. Thank you. I'm optimistic to the whole process. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to achieve everything that we have set with Dimitar in the shortest possible period. Thank you.
During our discussions, I do reiterate the merit-based strong support from our side to all the Balkan countries' endeavor to join EU as soon as possible. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Luisa Girada from Romania Public Television. A question for Prime Minister Nicolae Ciucă. When do you think the first LNG will come in Romania through the Greek port? And do you think the gas pipeline will be completed before the anticipated date? Thank you.
You know, here I don't want to speculate. We were very much discussing about this corridor, and taking into account the current situation and the big need of diversing gas resources, I discussed with Kirill, and I also discussed with the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Mitsotakis, and we were committed to do our best in order to have this interconnector, as I mentioned before, done as soon as possible, because we cannot get any LNG without having this interconnector done. Taking into account that last time when I spoke with Kirill by phone, he told me that it's almost weekly informed about the progress on the interconnector progress. So I do believe that at least to be done in time.
And I want to confirm, first of all, I really see Nicolae as a great friend as well, and with these topics of energy and common security, we've put it to the next level, and infrastructure connectivity. Just to tell you specifically for the dates, even last week I visited both the terminal in Bulgaria, the terminal in Alexandroupolis. I went to see the port. I actually flew over the pipe, and I monitored every single meter of the pipe to make sure that my reports are absolutely correct. So I got full commitment from the Greek government and directly from the Prime Minister that the pipe should be physically completed by the end of June. That means this year we should have floating gas in that pipeline, and I think the practical flow will happen very soon after that. So we are very, very committed, something that was not happening for the last 10 years. We've been able to progress in the last 3 months more than in the years before. And we'll keep in close communication with Nicolae in order to make sure that this gas flows up north as well. Thank you.
Let me tell you something that you probably don't expect. I think that the Western Balkans was a gunpowder keg, and it's no longer like that. The first reason is the fact that at least myself and the generation of people who are older than me have a very good recollection of what was going on in former Yugoslavia, and this recollection gives all the politicians just one message, that this should never happen again. And secondly, I think that the situation, politically speaking, has changed in all the countries of the Western Balkans, and that there is enough wisdom, because, you know, war is instigated by the politicians, but it is led by generals, and hopefully no longer shall we have such a situation. Regardless of what somebody thinks, they should not instigate any negative narratives in the Western Balkans. Regardless of how powerful these people are or could be, we can all see for ourselves what is going on in Ukraine, and all of us in the Western Balkans have to sympathize with that. So this should be like a warning and prevent anybody from thinking in such a way. In my opinion, there are a lot of things told that vanish in the air, that don't have any weight. And I am hopeful that the old Jewish proverb saying that if you say one man, you have saved the entire world, will be valid for all.
I will not yet go into full specifics, but I was
Neću
informed by the historical
konkretizovati
commission that
detalje, ali
especially
Komisija za
for,
istorijska pitanja me je izvijestila
feel the very important historical
o nekim
figures,
važnim
they're now in full agreement.
istorijskim
I'll give you further
ličnostima,
details,
odnosno njihovom tretmanu.
progress has been
Daću vam
done
neke
on this
detalje
historical
uskoro.
issue,
Došli smo do napretka po
in
tim
a very constructive and realistic way, which opens up our negotiation speed to be accelerated. I would first, of course, want to get the full report from the Historical Commission, inform my coalition partners, but soon you have news on this. We're moving very, very fast.
So, we have to understand that the Historical Commission is consisting of professors of history. It is co-chaired by two professors from the both countries, and they work independently of the political dialogue and the other working groups which are practically working on other issues. And on our G2G meeting here in Sofia, exactly in this room, they've been here, and they committed that they will speed up their work, and as soon as they come to conclusions which they agree upon based on their historical methodology, then they can share it with the others.
Thank you so much, everybody, and see you soon.